Welcome to the Military Breakdown Podcast. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating analysis, one that looks at a potential Chinese strategy, but maybe not the one everyone always talks about.
Right, not the all-out invasion scenario necessarily.
Exactly. This focuses specifically on Taiwan's outlying islands, places like Kinmen and Matsu. The analysis suggests Beijing might target these first, maybe as a way to test international responses, particularly, the U.S. response.
It's a crucial angle to consider. Looking at these more limited tactical possibilities tells us a lot, sometimes more than focusing only on the largest scale scenarios. Even small islands, geographically speaking, can be huge strategic tests.
So our mission today is to dive into what this assessment found. What are China's possible moves against these islands, and how might that specifically challenge deterrence? Okay, let's get into it. The analysis flags certain islands right away, Kinmen and Matsu. Can you paint a picture for us? Where are they, and why are they considered so, strategically significant, especially being so close to mainland China?
Well, their location is really the striking thing. Kinmen and Matsu are incredibly close to China's Fujian coast. We're talking less than 10 kilometers in places.
10 kilometers, wow.
Yeah, and the strait between Shuitu on Kinmen and the big Chinese city of Ximen, it's only about 6 kilometers wide. You can practically see across.
So historically, these were like Taiwan's front porch, heavily fortified during the Cold War, right?
Absolutely. They were forward positions, key military outposts. Think bunkers, tunnels, troops staring across the water.
Right, but the analysis we're looking at points out that things have changed quite a bit since the Cold War era, haven't they?
They really have. Since the 1990s, there's been a progressive demilitarization. Taiwan pulled back a lot of troops.
Okay.
And parts of the islands even opened up to, Chinese tourism. Some economic links were established.
So less military, more civilian activity?
To some extent, yes. But, and this is important, the analysis stresses they haven't lost all military value. There's still significant underground infrastructure, those granite tunnels from the Cold War, still there, observation posts, coastal defense positions. Some have been repositioned or updated since the 2010.
Ah, I see. So it's not like they're completely undefended holiday islands now. The bones are still there.
Exactly. Less overt, maybe fewer personnel, but the core defensive structures remain.
So what does the current defense situation look like on Kinmen and Matsu, according to this analysis? What kind of presence does Taiwan maintain there now?
The assessment suggests maybe around 3,000 troops under the Kinmen Defense Command, but it notes their heavy weapons are pretty limited compared to what's on Taiwan proper.
Limited how?
Well, they have short-range air defense, like the Sky Sword I.
Right.
Good for point defense, basically. They've got 120mm mortars, towed 155mm howitzers, the older M114 model, and some CM-21 armored personnel carriers.
Okay, so basic defense, troop movement.
Right. But what's not there is telling. The analysis points out that the heavier, more modern self-propelled artillery, like the M109A6 Paladin, that's kept on Taiwan's main island.
That sounds deliberate. Like maybe Taiwan isn't planning for a massive, prolonged artillery duel on those specific islands.
That seems to be the implication. It suggests maybe the strategy for Kinmen and Matsu is more about holding out surveillance, delaying actions, rather than matching heavy firepower. The analysis also mentions things like mobile radars, passive sensors being added for better situational awareness.
Right, adapting with technology rather than just brute force.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned updates. Are there more recent efforts mentioned in the analysis to bolster defenses, perhaps focusing on those newer approaches? Anything from, say, 2025?
Yes. That's a key point about how Taiwan might be adapting.
Sure.
Since 2023, the analysis highlights an accelerated fortification program.
Okay, what does that involve?
Things like restoring old concrete bunkers, installing newer systems like laser-guided anti-tank weapons, and crucially, deploying light ISR drones.
ISR drones. Remind us what ISR stands for.
Intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Basically, eyes in the sky. Small drones to watch what's happening.
Got it.
And the analysis actually gives a specific example. It mentions that in April 2025, 12 Cardinal II tactical drones were sent over to Matsu.
And their job?
Specifically to monitor Chinese naval movements nearby. So definitely a focus on watching and targeted defense, not building up a huge offensive capability there.
Okay, that makes sense. Surveillance, key defensive points, newer tech.
Okay.
Now let's get to the core of this assessment. What does it suggest China might do regarding these islands? What's the potential strategy?
So the main finding, and this seems to draw on recent intelligence assessments, is that Beijing might choose a limited military operation against Kinmen and Matsu.
Limited, meaning not the full D-Day style invasion of Taiwan itself.
Exactly. The purpose wouldn't necessarily be immediate full-scale conflict. It would be more about testing the boundaries, testing U.S. deterrence specifically, and gradually chipping away at Taiwan's control over these frontier areas.
Why these islands? Because they're seen as easier targets.
That's the argument. Their proximity to the mainland, their current defense posture, they're seen as the most vulnerable points for this kind of coercive probing action.
And this is where the analysis gets really interesting, because it's not just talking about soldiers landing on beaches, is it? It mentions other tactics, hybrid tactics.
Precisely. That's a huge part of it. Actions that fall below that threshold of clear-cut war but are still very aggressive.
Like what?
Things like limited naval incursions, sending ships into Taiwan's waters around the islands, or even landing undeclared forces may be described as maritime security forces.
Not regular PLA soldiers necessarily.
Could be paramilitary, Coast Guard types, maybe acting in a military capacity to seize a facility or control an area, but without a formal declaration of war. Blurring the lines.
Blurring the lines is right.
Yeah.
What else falls under this hybrid category in the analysis?
Cyberattacks are mentioned, specifically targeting critical infrastructure like the ports on the islands, disrupting supplies, communication, and the one you flagged earlier, cutting the undersea internet cables connecting the islands to Taiwan's mainland.
Yeah, that one seems particularly insidious. Why emphasize that? What's the strategic thinking there, according to the analysis?
Well, cutting those cables, it's not just an inconvenience. The analysis frames it as a direct hit on essential civilian life. Banking, communication, government services, just getting news, everything stops.
Creates instant isolation.
Exactly. It's designed to cause panic, chaos, make people feel abandoned, cut off, and it could happen before any troops even move. It's psychological pressure, creating vulnerability, using civilian infrastructure as a weapon, really.
Wow. So these hybrid moves may be used together?
Yeah.
What's the ultimate goal suggested by the analysis?
The idea is that these actions could lead to a kind of de facto occupation. China gains control, or at least denies Taiwan control, without a formal invasion announcement.
Changing the facts on the ground incrementally.
Right. Presenting the world with a done deal, a fait accompli, before anyone can fully react. It avoids crossing that clear red line that might trigger a massive international response.
This whole approach, incremental steps, blurring lines, operating below the threshold, it sounds familiar. It fits into that broader pattern people talk about, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. If you look at the bigger picture, this focus on offshore territories, the use of hybrid tactics, it fits perfectly with what's often called salami slicing.
Explain that concept briefly.
Sure, it's basically taking lots of small, sometimes ambiguous actions. Each individual action, each slice, might seem too small or unclear to justify a major reaction, but you keep slicing, and over time, those small steps add up to a really significant change in the status quo.
Gaining ground without a big fight.
Essentially, yes. Gradual territorial gain, shifting the strategic balance bit by bit. The analysis definitely views potential actions against Kinmen and Matsu through that salami slicing lens.
And are we seeing Chinese military activity in the region that seems to line up with this? Does the analysis connect recent PLA actions to this potential strategy?
Yes, it does. It notes a significant uptick in PLA activity around the Taiwan Strait recently. Since January 2024, for instance, the Eastern Theater Command has run repeated encirclement drills.
Practicing surrounding Taiwan.
Seems like it. And involving units relevant to island operations like the 72nd Group Army, naval forces, airborne troops.
Any really recent examples mentioned?
Yeah, the analysis points to May 2025. 2 Chinese aircraft carrier groups were operating simultaneously, one east and one west of Taiwan. That included the Shandong carrier, advanced Type 055 destroyers.
Showing sophisticated multi-axis capability.
Definitely. And it also mentions increased activity at air bases near the islands, like Longtian and Zhengzhou. They're hosting modern J-16 fighters and, significantly, WZ-7 soaring Dragon drones.
Those are the big surveillance drones.
High-altitude, long-endurance ISR drones, yes. Perfect for extended missions watching those outlying islands very closely.
Okay, so the military activity is clearly ramping up and seems tailored towards operations around Taiwan, potentially including these islands. But the analysis also suggests Beijing might delay a full-scale attack on Taiwan itself. Why? What conditions need to hold for that delay, according to the report?
The analysis suggests Beijing might hold off on the main island invasion as long as a few things are true, from their perspective anyway.
Okay.
First, if they still think unification is somehow negotiable, if non-military paths, however unlikely they look from the outside, aren't completely closed off in Beijing's view.
Right.
Second, if their big red lines aren't crossed, things like Taiwan declaring formal independence or major foreign troop deployments on the island, if those provocations are avoided.
Makes sense.
And third, maybe the most critical factor, if the cost of a full-scale invasion of the main island is just seen as too high.
Cost in what sense? Military, economic?
All of the above. The expected resistance from Taiwan's forces, the near certainty of international backlash, maybe direct intervention, and the huge economic hit China itself would take. If that cost-benefit analysis looks bad for Beijing,
Then maybe a limited action against the outlying islands looks more appealing.
that's the argument in the analysis. It's a lower cost, lower risk alternative. It lets them advance their goals, put pressure on Taiwan, and importantly, test U.S. resolve without immediately triggering the massive consequences of a full invasion.
So focusing on Kinmen and Matsu could be a way to gauge the reaction, especially Washington's reaction, before committing to something much bigger and riskier. What does this all mean for Taiwan's strategy then? And for the whole region?
Well, it puts Taiwan in a really tough spot. As the analysis highlights, they face this pressure, these hybrid threats, this potential for limited island grabs. So they have to strengthen their defenses against that specific kind of scenario.
But they can't just load up the islands with troops and tanks again.
Exactly. If they heavily remilitarize Kinmen and Matsu, Beijing could easily spin that as escalation, maybe even use it as a justification, a casus belli, for acting themselves. It's a very fine line to walk.
A delicate balance.
Extremely delicate. You've got China's ambitions, Taiwan's efforts to be resilient militarily, but also socially against things like cyberattacks and disinformation, and then you have the U.S. deterrence posture.
And the analysis notes that the U.S. position on defending these specific outlying islands is deliberately unclear, right?
That's right. Strategic ambiguity.
Yeah.
The U.S. hasn't explicitly said what it would do if only Kinmen or Matsu were attacked. It's meant to keep Beijing guessing, create uncertainty.
But that ambiguity carries risks too.
Absolutely. It makes the calculations complex for everyone. How far can China push? How will Taiwan respond? How will the U.S. react? It's a situation rife with potential for miscalculation.
So looking at this analysis really shifts the focus. A conflict might not start with the Big Bang, the invasion of Taiwan proper. It could start smaller, more ambiguously, with actions against these key outlying islands. A way to test the waters, test resolve, maybe change the map bit by bit.
It absolutely underscores the complexity. It's not just about troop numbers and hardware. It's about psychological pressure, hybrid tactics, managing escalation, testing wills, all playing out in this incredibly important region.
Yeah, definitely gives you a lot to think about. Well, thanks for walking us through that analysis. It really adds depth to understanding the potential flashpoints around Taiwan.
Glad we could cover it. It highlights those nuances that often get missed in the bigger picture discussion.
Absolutely. And maybe the final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on based on this. If these kinds of limited hybrid actions are designed to test resolve, especially U.S. resolve, what does demonstrating that resolve actually look like in response to something short of a full invasion? How do you effectively push back against salami slicing or cutting an internet cable without triggering a wider conflict?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it?
It certainly is. Thank you for tuning in to the Military Breakdown podcast. We hope this discussion gives you a deeper perspective on the dynamics at play. If you found this valuable, please do leave a comment, share it with others who might be interested.
And make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed. Check out our other episodes for more breakdowns of complex global security issues.
Until next time.